Over the years of doing this, one of the things that I realized was that work is such a significant place that we all go to, a significant portion of our time, our daily activity. And I know in my own career, work had its ups and its downs. Sometimes it was a place of great joy and contribution and collaboration, and sometimes it was downright miserable. I can remember I was 27 years old and I was in Chicago and I was working for a boutique leverage finance firm, and the chief of staff went on vacation, and I'll never forget this. I was asked, it was a great honor, I was asked to sit in on the leadership team meeting. And so I was there and I was sitting there and I was taking notes and I was fetching things. I mean, that's what a 27-year-old does, right? And I was listening to this conversation, and on that day, the topic of discussion was a restructure. I was a little surprised because we had just gone through a major restructure 6 months before. The executive vice president of this particular division fancied himself a very democratic person, very collegial. And so he went around the table and he says, "What do you think? Don't hold anything back. And what do you think? Don't hold anything back. And I want to know your true thoughts. You're my leadership team." And I had no idea whether he was going to get to me, whether he was going to ask me as, the person just sitting in. But he did, and he pointed to me and says, "What are your thoughts?" And I kind of leaned forward and I said, I'm a little concerned about everybody. We just went through a restructure 6 months ago. How is everybody going to react to that? And I almost didn't get the rest of the sentence out, because he leaned forward and he said, "Oh, for heaven's sakes, we're not baking cookies here. This isn't the Girl Scouts, Kelly. Get over it." Where did I go wrong? I wanted to know where I went wrong. That was a human statement. It's the human side of enterprise. It's the human side of what we do. At 27 years old, you just go on with your day. You feel a little humiliated and embarrassed, but you get over it. But over time, and in some of the other positions that I worked in, some of this sort of feeling or this energy seemed to be a pattern that developed. And I talked to some of my friends, and they were seeing it as well. Well, we certainly have found ourselves in a very unusual situation in our economy and in our society and in our workplaces. And I began to wonder, maybe that pattern that I noticed all those years ago really is a pattern. Maybe it exists everywhere. And maybe it's time for us to start to say, work, commerce, enterprise, we can make it more human again. We can harmonize it again. It doesn't mean we all have to look like each other. It doesn't mean that we all have to agree. But we can begin to enter into a dialogue where we can harmonize our opposite points of view. And in that harmonizing, we can learn about how to bring the sacred back into our workplaces again. Recently there was a dinner, and a group of us got together to talk about having the sacred come back into commerce, so sacred commerce. And in the course of having that conversation, there were a couple of people, kind of looking at me with big eyes, and I said, raise your hands if you almost didn't come here tonight. And half the hands shot in the air, and I said, was it because of the word sacred? They're like, oh yeah, we were a little bit concerned. Is this going to be like religious or anything? I said, no. The word sacred means respect. It means reverence. It means to bring respect and reverence back into a place where we spend a lot of our time. Sacred commerce. What would that take? How could we do that? I don't want to say that I have any magic wand that I can wave and I know all the answers. I don't. But later today, I'm hosting a party, and I have invited some folks over who are very interested in the topic. They come from a variety of different backgrounds and fields. And we're going to ask them, what do you think sacred commerce could look like and feel like for you? Would it even be something you're interested in dialoguing on? One of the outcomes was that everybody started to nod. They said, you know what, if I could do my little piece to bring respect, both for my work and for my colleagues back into the workplace, that would change my viewpoint about work and about commerce.